On today's episode, we have to dissect the coaching matchup between Philadelphia's Doc Rivers and Toronto's lead man, Nick Nurse. This is going to be a fun one with this 4-5 matchup. We get into it next right here, Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. You are Locked On 76ers. I'm Devon Givens from 97.5 The Fanatic Radio in Philadelphia, alongside my co-host and partner, Keith Pompey of Inquirer.com. He's a longtime Sixers beat writer, does a fantastic job. Keith, what's going on, man? We have a lot to talk about with this series with so many days off.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. It's like this is like football. I can't see how people deal with that anticipation just to watch your team lose at the end of it. I'm not saying the Sixers going to lose, but some of you guys got some losing football teams.
Either side. I got you. I understand. Yeah. But no, man, I want to thank everybody for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. And remember, Locked On 76ers is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, where you get to see, again, Keith's wonderful T-shirt here on Locked On 76ers. Make sure you check this out, free and available on all of your platforms. Keith, listen, man, when we talk so much about all of these things with the players and what the players need to do on the floor, we have a marquee matchup, if you will, between the two coaches. Doc Rivers, the top 15 head coach of all time, added to the list during the season. Nick Nurse, also an NBA champion himself from winning a few seasons ago. And these two guys have a long resume. They've done a fantastic job with their teams over the course of these years that they've been the head men of their squads, the respective squads. And this is going to be a fun matchup between these two. You've seen each other 4 times during the season, and now you have a potential 7-game matchup here where there are not a lot of surprises. So, Keith, how do you look at this one and dissecting these two coaches with them being so good at what they do?
That's a good question, and it's going to be a tough one. I mean, because when you look at it, like right now, while you were talking, I was thinking about, Doc Rivers last year leading the 76ers to the number 1 seed in the East, right? And I was thinking about how they were supposed to go further than they were, but they probably would have if they weren't playing 4-on-5 basketball and Ben Simmons, did what he did, right? So when you look at it, I think that Doc Rivers gets some criticism. A lot of it is unjust, in my opinion, because his roster does have a lot of holes. But right about now, it's like, these two coaches are a major storyline. I mean, you have a guy like Nick Nurse who can, come up with these great defensive schemes. I mean, you have a guy like Doc Rivers who was a good coach in his own right. He does great side out of bounds plays. He draws up plays. It's funny. There's often times where you see a guy at the foul line and all of a sudden you see Doc getting the clipboard and drawing up a play, or right after somebody scores. And so that's his strength. And the other guy's strength is the defensive side. And when you look at it, it's going to be tough for the 76ers not having Matisse. So Doc and his staff, and let's face it, he does have a pretty good staff. They're going to have their hands full, and they're going to have to be able to, do certain things to try to give them a little bit of an advantage.
Well, I look at this, and you're right, man. I've been fond of Nick Nurse from afar and just seeing what he's been able to do. Of course, the one series that we are familiar with when Kawhi Leonard hit that shot, and just the way that he's been able to, with so many pieces, have them come together. And then you have the star power of Leonard and Lowry at that time. Things break up, and now you have to, again, put things back together, put the pieces back together. And let's not forget about the Tampa Raptors from a season ago, right, Keith? And, who they played all of their 72 games on the road because they were never in Toronto because of having to play there. And yet, while they didn't have the record that I'm sure that they wanted to get into the postseason, and they did not, He kept them competitive. We never saw where they didn't fight and they didn't quit on the coach and they didn't quit on what he was preaching. They went out there and did the best job that they could, and they come back probably ahead of schedule, Keith, with where a lot of people thought that they would be, maybe down the bottom end of the postseason, where we're looking at the 8, maybe in the play-in tournament. Instead, they make a big-time charge once Pascal Siakam got healthy. He got back into the lineup. They made a big charge, man, and they got right back into it as being one of the better teams, and that has a lot to do with what he does, how he looks at their scheme, what he feels is best for them with so many players, trusting a rookie in Scotty Barnes. Doc Rivers talked about this yesterday, Keith, post-practice, where he was saying, you're looking at this guy and you look at how he's playing, and he seems like, in Doc's words, that you see him playing like a 10-year vet when you see him out there, and that means he's getting the trust from not only his teammates, but his head coach and the coaching staff, and him going out there and doing that job. So tremendous work by Nick Nurse to get the Raptors to where they are right now. And for Doc Rivers, as much heat that he does take, and I'm one of them, I do give him heat in this city. I always give him credit, though, for 72 games a season ago, and they had a 49-win record. Number 1 seed. We know what happened. He's part of it, but it was more of some other things that happened for them to lose that series. This year, dealing with the Simmons saga, COVID, just like everyone else, and still having to try to figure things out. And all he's done is kept them at the top of the Eastern Conference, Keith, and Joel Embiid is a big part of that. But he deserves credit, some credit for what he has been able to do with this basketball team and keeping them afloat and then being up there at the top. That month of January that they had, where they finally had a big number of home games here in Philadelphia after being on the road for so long, right, Keith? And missing players. Joel Embiid was player of the month. And Doc Rivers was a darn good coach for that month specifically, winning the games that they did. I think they only lost 3 games for that month.
Yeah.
And they were phenomenal. And he did a great job with what he's done, giving Tyrese Maxey the opportunity to be the guy. He's kind of thrust into the lineup, but seeing the guy just starting to blossom as this player that he is. So this is going to be a fun matchup to see those guys work off each other and see who does what in order to give their team the edge game 1 on throughout this series. So fun matchup between Rivers and Nurse for this series. Fun stuff with the matchups with some of the players as well. And one of them being for the Toronto Raptors, Pascal Siakam. He gave the Sixers fits. We're going to talk about why he's going to be so important in the series and possibly how they can slow him down next right here. Locked on 76ers.
Yeah, they're going to have their hands full a little bit, D, with Pascal. But, that's what makes it a good series, right? You gotta try to, do what you can. But you know what? Shady Rays is a great pair of glasses. Shady Rays is an independent sunglassing company that gives you the features of $200 glasses for a fraction of the price. That means polarized lens, well-constructed, durable frames, and premium high-end finishes. Also, something that you won't find anywhere else is Shady Rays' insane protection program. Shady Rays includes lost and broken protection on every pair. They will send you a brand new pair if you lose them, no matter what happened. Give them a try, and if you don't love them, you'll pay nothing. It's as simple as that. Plus, 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. Exclusively for our listeners, head to shadyrays.com and use the code LOCKEDON to get 50% off 2 or more pair of polarized sunglasses. That's code LOCKED ON for their best deal of the season. 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses, backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews. So I'm telling you, D, you better hurry up and get yourself some Shady Rays.
Listen, man, I got to get the Shady Rays for the parade, whatever parade it might be in the area or elsewhere. So
why not a Sixers parade? He said for whatever parade.
No, it's gonna be here. Let's positivity. Okay. We bring it in. Shady Rays, get the glasses. Make sure you guys check in on that for sure. And it's going to be summertime, man. We got to look good. We got to feel good. We got to have our eyesight right as we go for this deep run in the postseason. Thank you all for making Locked On 76ers your first listen. Check out your Locked On Now podcast as well for nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from local experts. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. And Keith, I got to tell you, when we speak about Locked On Now podcast for the other experts that are out there, you gotta check in and tap into everybody talking about the Brooklyn and the Cleveland game. Brooklyn advanced to be the 7th seed after defeating the Cleveland Cavaliers in Brooklyn, and now they await Charlotte and Atlanta, the winner of that one. Cleveland awaits for the winner of that matchup to see who they have the right to host and play in that final game for the 8th spot in the Eastern Conference. And the same thing for the West, where you had a really good game last night between Minnesota and Los Angeles. So with those, make sure you check out the Locked On Now podcast to get the thoughts from everybody in those cities, covering those teams and seeing what they had to say about those matchups. But Keith, we need to talk about how to slow down Pascal Siakam, especially in that last game, right before the season ended, that Thursday night. The Sixers have real problems with Pascal Siakam in the second half. He had 15 in the third quarter, and in the fourth quarter, he just played really, really well down the stretch. I think he had a 37-point triple-double off the top of my head, and he was just getting by defenders, man, putting the ball on the floor, getting by defenders, getting to the rim, finishing at the cup, some intermediate shots that he was getting, pull up, getting to a spot, finding it somewhere at the foul line, the nail area, and knocking down jumpers. He was even going at Joel Embiid because he was so much in the zone, Keith, of what he was doing. So we know how important he is to that Raptors team. How do they slow him down?
Man, they better pray and hope he gets on the bus late. That's how they slow him down. Or the driver is slow driving. It's like, nah. You know what? It's weird because I would say the best way to slow him down would be have Matisse Thybulle as the primary defender, then bring somebody else over to help out, right? But the problem is Matisse isn't playing, right? So that's where we are. So I think they're going to have their hands full. I think that what we'll do is, if you notice, last game they kept throwing different players after him, and also one of them was Joel Embiid. The problem with that is he's a little bit more too mobile for Joel, right? And let me just throw off these stats of his last 9 games, right?
Yeah. Yep.
He had 35 points, 23 points, 40 points, 12. He had a bad game, 5 for 15. Followed up with 16 points, 29, 31, 37. He had 11 rebounds and 12 assists and 2 steals in that game against the Sixers. And then the final game that he played of the season of the next night, he had 29 points, 12 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 steals, and 1 block. You know, right now, this guy has been on fire. You know, he's 6'8". You know, he could play both forward positions, and he can excel at that. So they're going to have their hands full, man. Like, I guess you might say, let's put Danny Green on them, but then who are you going to put on Fred VanVleet? You know, so it's just they're going to have their hands full. I think their best bet may be to try to see if they can put Joel on him, but I don't know if Joel can keep up with him.
Well, Matisse Thybulle, just to be clear, when you mentioned him not being available, he won't be available in Toronto. He'll play the home games in Philadelphia, ineligible to play. But my guess would be that, yes, maybe Matisse Thybulle at home, or you go with Tobias Harris and give him the first crack at it and see how he defends him, see what he does. Because of the length, he's able to keep up with him lengthwise and should be at least mobility-wise also be able to keep up. But we saw where Tobias had trouble defending him in their matchups. So I like the Joel Embiid opportunity. Is he more mobile? Of course he is more mobile. But I also say that, you know, maybe that length will bother him, though, on those shots that he was getting to those spots. Maybe the length of Embiid will bother him. It's just a matter of Embiid staying out of foul trouble when it comes to something like that. And here's another one. When we talk about being off the bench, too, with some of the players, I mean, Keith, a couple of minutes of somebody with length like Paul Reed, that fits perfectly with what we're talking about. Could we see Paul Millsap in this series just because of him being a veteran and knowing how to defend players like that? May get the best of them, I know, but just throwing out options because, as you said, and Doc Rivers mentioned it yesterday post-practice, they're going to throw a lot of different looks at him, a lot of different guys. And he's not the only one with Van Vliet, Gary Trent, right? Scotty Barnes as well. So we're going to have to see how all of that plays out because when you talk about Tobias Harris maybe on Siakam, then who's on Scotty Barnes? Is that Danny Green on Scotty Barnes? Is that Matisse Thybulle on Scotty Barnes? And the same deal for Van Vliet and Anunoby if he's available. And also let's not forget about Gary Trent as well. So they have to find a way to slow this guy down because not only does he score, you mentioned the assist in that triple-double game against the Sixers, he playmates for everyone else as well. And he has more than enough people on his side that can score the basketball.
Yeah, I agree a lot. He has more than enough. And the thing is, Fred Van Vliet, if you get Pascal cooking and then you might want to try to bring somebody else over, that's just going to open up more stuff for Fred. And Fred is a lethal guy. He might be one of the most underrated players in the league, even though he's an all-star. Yep. But, Pascal, that's the head of the snake right about now. I mean, he could play, like I said, he could play both positions, both forward positions. And one thing I'm going to tell you this, man, whenever we go to Toronto and we always go to like shoot around, the Sixers are always, they like talking to the media before shoot around. But whenever we go there and they have shoot around on the main floor, he's always on that floor, like on the court by himself, a couple workout people, putting them through like a rigorous workout. I mean, this dude works hard. And that's going to be, and another thing is don't discount the fact that Henry and Joel from the Cameroon, so there's some lights there too, like country bragging lights. Who's the best countryman? So, he's going to be tough for the 76ers.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, not only him, Van Vliet, Gary Trent, some really good scorers. And I am curious, though, of how Doc Rivers, Dan Burke, how they decide to go defensively and slowing Pascal Siakam down. He's had a lot of success. And maybe that changes just a little bit because we will see Van Vliet out there on the floor as well. And if you pay attention to one, you're going to have to focus on the other also because they're just lethal at what they're able to do. They have a good feel of what the offense is. They know what Nick Nurse likes to do, and they have to be on their game in order to slow those players down. I would love that 5 for 15 that you talked about for those 15 points, one of those games. And hopefully, if it is Matisse Thybulle, when he does draw that assignment, make your games, right? Every minute counts for Matisse Thybulle because he's only able to play in those home games. So give it your all, go all out, slow that guy down. Sometimes he is the head of the snake. You got to cut that off at the beginning and not allow him to get too loose. Guy's a good player, man. He's really a good player. Has stepped up too because last season and earlier this season as well, there were some reports wondering because remember he got the big contract. Things seem to be an issue there with Siakam as if he was possibly on the outs, Keith.
Yeah.
And, reading reports and all that stuff, we didn't know what was going on. And all of a sudden, he just goes away, and he's playing like that all-star level player that we saw after they won that championship. And he's back to that level of player where he's probably a top 20 player in the game right now based on his play as of late. So they have to do a good job, Dan Burke, Doc Rivers, the players as well, in slowing him down. Curious to see when we talked about the matchup between Rivers and Nurse, how they decide to go that route. And, Keith, when we do that, that kind of changes the pace of play. We need to talk about the pace in playoffs over the years and the pace of the playoffs and the current times of how the game has changed. And in this series specifically, because of what both teams like to do, getting out in transition, running, who has the advantage there when it comes to the pace? If it does get into a half-court set, Keith, why the Sixers may have that in their favor. We'll discuss that when we get back right here on Locked On 76ers. But as we get into the playoffs here in the 2022 playoffs, the Eastern Conference for the 76ers and the Raptors, their body has to be right. We're talking about they got the week off, as you mentioned. We hate that the week off and all, but we hope that they're eating right. And I got to tell you and everybody else, and I hope they're listening too, about our next partner, Athletic Greens, as one of our new people that we're getting involved with the product. Literally use it every day. I have an opportunity to, because I started taking AG1 because of the fact that we have these late nights of all these games. My radio shows, they go until midnight and sometimes beyond. And when I get up, another radio interview that I have to do or something else, and my body, I just have to make sure that I'm right. So I've gotten involved with Athletic Greens. It's a really good thing to get into, because when you're talking about vitamins and minerals and the whole food source, superfoods, probiotics, you want to make sure that you're putting the right stuff into your body. So I make sure that I do that right now. Athletic Greens is a climate neutral certified company. 2020, Athletic Greens purchased carbon credits that support projects protecting old growth rainforests as well. It's a really good, created when the founder experienced a ton of gut health issues. Now, I don't have that part. I'm good. But, I wanted to make sure that I was right. My body was right, so I can do what I need to do on a daily basis to do my job right and live right every day to be around. So right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. And I hope you're able to do it. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. So if you're on the move a lot, this is for you. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NBA Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NBA Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. So check it out. Once again, Athletic Greens. It's a great place for you. It's a great place for me. So I want to make sure that you guys are getting involved with that. My other way of staying right, especially when I'm active and trying to keep up with some of the people playing basketball, my kids, we're running around doing this stuff. Built Bar. It's one of my favorites, right? They're keeping me right, making me look good. I got my sunglasses on. I'm eating right. And I got to have my snack. And instead of eating cakes and candy bars, I go to my puffs that are the Built Bar, because they're made with 100% real chocolate, covered in 100% real chocolate. The puffs are infused marshmallows. They are fluffy. They're marshmallowy. Not just a protein bar, they're a treat. I try to tell everybody, fan favorites, the flavors include coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie, coconut, yummy, cinnamony churro, as well as mint brownie coconut, coconut almond, and the flavor of the month, white chocolate, cookies and cream. That's a big hit as well. The bars contain 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. You cannot beat that. All the Built Bars are covered once again in 100% real chocolate, including the puffs. So check them out. Go to built.com and go to the promo code. Use the promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com, and let us know how you do. Thank you for hanging out with us here on Locked On 76ers. Devon Givens, Keith Pompey. And Keith, when we start talking about eating right and having these Built Bars, might help you run faster. The pace of play in the playoffs is always a big deal. We speak about the NBA regular season. You can get up and down the floor, the fast pace, transition buckets, all those things. When we get to the playoffs, it slows down. So with both of these teams, we know they like to get out in transition, not allow the defenses to get set. I think the Sixers do have an advantage, but James Harden, as the point guard, when that ball comes off the rim, Tyrese Maxey gets up the floor. Tobias Harris pushes the pace. Joel Embiid, when he rebounds the ball and decides to keep it and run, he has a good pace to him in transition. A lot of that stuff is going to be taken away. The one thing James Harden does is that great kick-ahead pass, of course, with the speed of getting the ball up the floor, allowing his teammates to make the decision from there, whether it's a three or going to the basket. Keith, I think it's going to be important for the Sixers to make sure that in the transition they get their buckets But I also look at them in the half-court set, and with Joel Embiid, the best player in the series, I think they have an advantage there.
Yeah, I mean, I would say they would. I mean, also, I think that we're talking about pushing it up and doing all that stuff, and James Harden getting all, pushing it up or passing it forward. I feel like, that but it being a playoff game and everything is typically in the half court, that kind of erases some of James Harden's weaknesses. Now, the problem is if James Harden is going to want to dribble, 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 and have them spread the floor, then it's basically, to me, that's bailing out. That's going to bail out uh, Toronto, right? But
Right.
I do think that the fact that you got Joel and you got James and you don't have to run 100 miles an hour, just to get up and down the court, I think that's going to benefit them. I do. I mean, now again, James is going to have to make those shots. But if he's like anything close to the old James Harden from a couple years ago, I mean, the Sixers are in good shape. I mean, I do, but like you're right, the game is just going to slow up, and they can't I get it. I know that Toronto is taller than them, so you would think that Toronto would benefit more from a half court game. But the thing is, these dudes are extremely athletic, and they get up and run, and they like getting transition baskets. I think with James and Joel, and then you have the shooters and Danny and all of them and Tobias, and Tyrese, who's been on fire lately. I think is one of those things where you got to get to this half court, man. You got to get to the half court to get Toronto out of their offense.
And we've seen the Sixers put up a lot of points. So we've seen them get into the 110s, 120s, even 30s and 40s as well. So we know that they can score the basketball. Defense is going to ramp up and in the playoffs, as we know. So they're going to have to be ready make sure that they keep the speed going. Make sure, though, that they also have enough energy on the defensive side that they're able to also do what they need to do. So this is going to be important. The pace of play in this series, based on what they're able to do, it's going to be something that we have to keep an eye on, because we've seen all season long with the transition buckets that the Sixers trail in a lot of games, or lose that matchup, in that category in a lot of games during the regular season. So they have to do that. And also, when we talk about the game slowing down and the points in the paint, that is a lot of the Joel Embiid part. So how much work does he have to do in the paint versus being out there on the perimeter getting that done? Because he gets guys in foul trouble. We know if it's Kem Birch that starts to get into foul trouble, they bring in Precious Achiuwa and Chris Boucher. With all due respect to those guys who are very, very talented, they're still too small, of course, to defend him one-on-one. They're going to have to send help, get those guys in foul trouble, and that will help things out. So that is part of the pace of play as well, him being himself on the low block, and even in that mid-range area where he's able to face up, get that rip-through going, pick up those cheapy fouls, and the next thing you know, the Sixers are in the bonus, and they are able to get those free throws early in the quarter and in the game time, and that will be beneficial to them overall. But Keith, this has been a fun one, in talking about the coaching and how to defend Siakam, and certainly the pace of play in the playoffs and who that favors. We both agree that the Sixers could have that advantage in there for them. When we get together next tomorrow, we got a lot more to dive into with this basketball team, and maybe some matchups that we want to pay attention to as well with this team. So everybody out there, thanks so much for making Locked On 76ers your first listen every day. Tomorrow, we'll get into some matchups that we deem as really important in this series, not named Doc Rivers and Nick Nurse, of course, Pascal Siakam, maybe some others that we can talk about as well. And now, for your second listen, check out Locked On NBA. We're Locked On experts covering the biggest stories around the NBA every Monday through Friday in less than 30 minutes. And it's free and available wherever you get your podcast. Some of the big stories, of course, last night, the 2 play-in tournament games that happened, where the 7 seeds, both in the East and the West, win their respective games on their home floor. And they are now moving to remain the 7 seed and taking on the number 2 seed in both the East, Brooklyn, taking on the Celtics. And in the West, the Timberwolves defeated the Los Angeles Clippers. They will now take on the Memphis Grizzlies in the first round. Keith, as always, man, fun catching up with you, and I look forward to doing this one more time tomorrow and throughout the rest of the week.
Yeah, great catching up with you, Mr. Nike. But other than that, like everything is going to be good. I mean, we got a lot to talk about, Mr. Nike.
Yeah. You hear that, y'all? You hear that, Nike?
Yeah, I know, right? Show my man, put some respect on his name and in his wallet.
We're here. Keith, thanks, man. Always great to catch up with you.
All right, bro. Peace.
All right, man. Talk to you later.